Good morning. Oh, let me see. I think that I need a checklist for when I go live. Checklists are important. In my job, in my 9 to 5, I speak a lot about it and I believe in them. And I think they're important because I have this entire process to go through when I go live. So, good morning, and welcome to our weekly chat. Um, let's get started. Hey, Veronica. Um, so, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Waveney. I am a leadership coach and I help new managers develop leadership influence by mastering their relationships at work and leveraging their communication skills. So I focus on two core foundational um, you know, points, which is work relationships and your communication. Because all of life is about relationships. All of life is about relationships. You may have heard the cliche, it's about who you know. And to some degree, that is so true. To some degree, it's about your competence. But if you don't get along with others, if people don't like you, you're not warm, you're not welcoming, um, then competence will only get you so far. And usually, people who are like that are very arrogant. They're very arrogant, they're very ego driven, because they think that they can survive with just the competence, what they have, their education, and so forth. So that's what I focus on because I've seen it. Um, I've seen it so much throughout my career. And many of you who know me know that in my background is in HR. At the time of this live stream, I am still practicing HR in my 9 to 5. So there you have it. So weekly chat. So this week I wanted to talk to you about unhealed embarrassing professional situations. I know it's a mouthful. So this week, if you were looking at the people brand content, I was focusing on, and just before I get into that, if you see me looking this way and that way, I go live simultaneously. So I am live both on Facebook and Instagram. Okay. So I'm trying to, you know, engage my audience in both areas. So this week's content on the People's Brand, and if you haven't checked it out, you should. I spoke about emotional, like your emotional well-being, your emotional, um, how you show up emotionally, triggering moments. On Wednesday, on Wavelength Wednesdays, I gave you some powerful questions that you could ask. I also shared some information on my newsletter. So I have a newsletter that I at least try to send to communicate to my to the persons on my list there at least twice. I aimed for 3 times. I'm aiming for 3 times, but at least twice per month I'm in there sending stuff out. So if Instagram or Facebook ever goes down, like Instagram went down the other day, you guys would remember you still have another avenue in which to access my information, to have access to me, which is through my newsletter. And so this week I spoke a lot about that because things that happen to us in our personal life, whether trauma, um, embarrassing situations at work, they could lead to us showing up differently, and it can affect our how we lead people. And so leadership, it's not about just being competent, right? The work is ongoing. This is something that when you sit down and you're being onboarded, your organization probably will not bring this up until there's a situation that maybe happen and they have to coach you through it. And so I am here to um, highlight those parts, the great part of being a new manager, the great part of what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and the messy things as well, such as our unhealed baggage, if you want to call it that. And so you are who you are. We can't separate ourselves, right? Um, once ago, and I used to believe that as well. I used to buy into that. Um, I used to believe, like many others, that you have to leave your personal stuff at home, right? But you are who you are, whether you work or at home. And you can't decide that, okay, this is the work with me and this is the home with me. Like things that happen to us are connected and we walk with them. Yes, we need to be professional, but we carry stuff with us, right? And sometimes the things that we go through, it's very difficult to divorce like emotions, and emotions need to be dealt with. Like people who are angry, they're always angry, or people have stuff going on, they need to address it. Emotions are there. I'm not a psychologist by any means, right? Let me just put that out there. And, if I'm saying something and it resonates with you, just drop a word or emoji in the comments so that I know that you're feeling me, you're vibing with me, right? Um, what was I saying? Yeah, we can't divorce the things that happen to us, and which is why we need to address these emotions as they show up. So if something happens to us, we need to feel the emotion. We need to really dig deep and understand us. In order to lead people effectively, you have to learn to lead yourself. And in leading yourself, it also means that you are addressing those parts of yourself that need love and care and TLC, right? So we get dressed, we go to work, and we have on our work face, we have on our work persona, we have on our work mask, we have on our professional, you know, mask, if you will, right? But we still have items going on. So let me before I get into like some different scenarios, because I have like about 7 scenarios that, and there could be more because each each person is different, each individual is different, its situation and work environment is different. So I have 7 things that could be classified as professional embarrassing situations. But before I get into that, I want to say that, you know, because leaders have such frequent high touch contact with people. Like if you're a leader, you have to be dealing with people. If you don't like people, or if you shouldn't be leading, because you're going to have constant contact with people, right? Throughout your career. And it's not just your boss, but not just your team, but it's also your peers. You're dealing with vendors. It's all around. You're dealing with networking, and so you have you know all these persons in your space, and they're interacting with you and also triggering stuff within you. And this is why you have to address those. So let's talk about what could be classified as a professional embarrassing moment. Um, One, and this is in no particular order. So you could get embarrassed because you didn't follow a process at work. There was something that you were supposed to do and you did not do it. You didn't follow the way it was supposed to be done. And because of that, you got in in trouble, right? You may have gotten documented, you may have gotten, um, you know, your boss may have told you off, maybe they told you how disappointed, maybe they weren't so nice as well. Maybe they have their own stuff as well. Maybe they need to listen to the people's rant, right? Maybe they do. So you didn't follow a process. You didn't follow a process, and as a result, you were embarrassed because of the result of that. Then it could be you missed a critical deadline. You missed a critical deadline, and for me, who in my 9 to 5, we work for a corporate. We work for a global company. There's some deadlines you cannot miss. So if you miss that deadline, it's not just you, it's not just your team, it's also the general manager and whoever and all these other people that get involved and all these people that are held accountable. And so if you miss a critical deadline, that could be professionally embarrassing because you're a leader, you're a manager now, right? Your leadership. And I was telling someone the other day that when you're a manager, you don't get to throw other people under the bus. At some point, if you start making excuses, it sounds dumb, right? It sounds really dumb. You sound like um you're trying to blame, and it's not a good look for you, right? You may be trying, and I know a lot of times when people try to explain stuff, it doesn't sometimes you just need to just you know zip it and just take it. You messed up, and you need to just own it, right? That's something that new managers need to learn, and people who are in leadership as well. Sometimes you just need to zip it and own it. So number 3 is you may have a customer complaint. So a customer may have lodged a complaint against you for whatever reason. Maybe they were wrong, maybe they were right, maybe you had a little tood, I don't know, maybe somebody on your team, maybe somehow you got involved, you know. Oh, I like that how you put that. Zip it and own it. Send me that, Crystal. Sometimes, I'm on here and I say things and I'm like, oh, they're so good. I could use them. But it's even more nicer when someone who listens just catches that. So yeah, so the customer may have lodged a complaint against you. Either which way, you're in trouble now. There's something that happens and you're in trouble now. And it's not because the customer is always right, right? The customer is not always right. They're not always right. But they should always be treated right. And I learned this from a general manager I had. And I was like, wow, that is so true, right? So a customer complaint and it causes you to now be embarrassed for whatever reason. A boss that or peer, somebody at work who is bullying you. But so if you're in management, it's most likely is your boss, somebody you report to. Maybe they bully you. Maybe you have a very introverted or quiet demeanor, because usually some of the times, not usually, some of the times people prey on that, right? That's what bullies do. They look at someone, they assess them, and well, in my mind, that's what they do. Again, I'm not a psychologist, okay? They look at people, they size them up, as we say in the Caribbean, they size you up and they feel like they could push you around, right? And so maybe you're being bullied by a boss, maybe they've said something to you in front of others that's really embarrassing, and it caught you off guard, you didn't know how to react, and you just sort of took it, but it's not sitting well with you. You have that, right? And then there are mistakes that cost the company, right? Maybe someone on your team made a mistake, maybe you made a mistake, right? And so the result of that, you've had to explain yourself, right? And sometimes it's not that we get in trouble, but sometimes even explaining ourselves puts us in an uncomfortable and embarrassing situation. And then what about those times that we are nervous or anxious, like during a presentation? I remember the first time I went live, And I'm like, I was nervous. I remember the first time I had to facilitate a training. I was co-facilitating a training when I was at another company, and was it overseas? I can't remember. But I was being assessed because you just couldn't train like that, right? You had to be assessed, like you had to be certified. And I was being certified by our regional trainer. And God bless her heart. She's so amazing. She's so amazing. You know, she gave me words of encouragement. She didn't tear me down. But I was sitting in a room with other managers, and I don't think I was a manager at the time. Or if I was a manager, I was just new into management, right? So I had a lot of stuff going on, like doubting myself and stuff like that. So, but she was really great. So, what about those times you had to prepare or speak in front of others, or you know, that that is that could, and you were so nervous. Maybe you missed something. Maybe you said something. Maybe you blank out. That's an embarrassing situation, professionally embarrassing situation. And then gossip, right? Maybe you said something um, about someone and it got back to them. And these are things that, all these things, and I just wanted to give you this list. All these things are stuff that happens that cause us to be embarrassed, right? And you may be saying, well, you know, these things are just easy. These are, you know, these are not nothing. These are everyday things. Yes, there may be everyday things, but we have to resolve them within ourselves because they will show up. Okay, they will show up. And I'll give you a real quick example. If you had, if you're a new manager, right? You're new in leadership, you didn't follow a process, or your team didn't, there was some customer complaint or something like that, and you got chewed out by your boss about it, right? So next time, and you haven't resolved it, the next time you're dealing with a process, you might be micromanaging your team and driving them insane, right? Because you haven't taken the necessary steps to resolve what happened before. You haven't taken the steps to assess why it happened, right? How you felt, why it happened. And it shows up in you micromanaging everybody because you don't want to be embarrassed. And all of a sudden, it becomes about you. Well, what about the person on your team who made that mistake or who was involved or who, what about them? So all of a sudden, now you're just being this micromanager on your team, or you may be targeting that person. You may feel some sort type of a way that about this person, and so you treat them differently. And so these are ways in which, if we don't resolve things, they show up in us leading, right? And so people, because leaders have such high touch, frequent contact, you're dealing with people, you're managing teams, you have to, people don't leave their stuff at, you don't leave your stuff at the door, they don't, your team don't leave their stuff at the door. You put everybody together in a workplace and it's some drama or politics. Let's be real, the workplaces always have something going on. Every workplace has it, but you have to be the leader, the influential leader that rises above that. You have to be the one that is the anchor for the team, right? For yourself and for the team. And so you're dealing with people's issues, your issues. You're also dealing with your team's expectations of you, right? There is a term, and I spoke about it a few times. I probably will do a live stream on it. um, it's about psychological contracts. And these, what a psychological contract is basically a contract, and in the work context, is that there are expectations that your team has of you, right? Expectations they have of you that are unspoken, that is not a part of their, nobody gave them that in an offer letter, okay? And people have that all the time. Like they expect certain things from their workplaces, they expect certain things from their leaders. And I can't think of anything right now off the top of my head, but I'm gonna probably do some information, put some content around it, and speak about it a little bit more. But people have their expectations of you, right? And they have their own unhealed and unhealthy emotions, and they have their own baggage and trauma. And if you don't take care of you, you're gonna find yourself embroiled in others other people's stuff, right? Because people have triggers. And I could tell you right now, one of my triggers is I don't like people being treated unfairly at work. I don't like managers treating the staff unfairly. It really bothers me. It really, really bothers me. I come home and I sit with it and I cuss and I vent, right? And I'm going to be very honest. And I have to take care of me. I get frustrated about it, right? Because in the same vein, because of my position, I can't just go firing people or, dealing with them in some type of way because they've dealt with others that way. I have to look at the situation on a whole, you know. As a part about HR that is just very, it's tricky, right? So I have to deal with my stuff. I have to because I remember, right? I remember my first manager. Oh my God, she was horrible. She was horrible. So I know that that feeling that I have about managers treating their staff unfairly, I know it comes from a very personal and deep place. People don't like it generally, right? But if you've had a situation that you went through that, it's going to be even more real for you, right? And so for me, it's very triggering. And so I, as an HR director in my day job, I have to be fair. Like I have to find that balance. I have to listen because a lot of the times, and I'm kind of veering off topic, a lot of the times, um, your staff, if the employees, if they come to you with stuff, you have to know how to ask the right questions. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself taking sides, and that's not fair, right? And that's not giving the other person an opportunity to, you're not seeing the whole picture. And that may not be the absolute truth, the real truth. Sorry. It might be their truth, but it might not be the whole picture. And so and I'm just using me as an example. And I do that because I want you to understand that it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing process, right? That people, that leaders go through. And I want you to understand that each of us, our triggers are different, and you have to know how to identify them. So, um, you're dealing with all this stuff. You're dealing with people, you're dealing with your baggage, you're dealing with you and your triggers and stuff like that. And if you're not mature enough, if you're not healed, if you don't have closure, if you don't resolve it within yourself, then you're going to find yourself spiraling in unhealthy behaviors. Okay. And so, unhealed emotions lead to negative thoughts, and our thoughts drive our behavior. Let me give you another example. If you were, maybe before you became a manager, this is something that happens as well, something that I saw actually, a few months ago that I picked up on it, and which really made me start to, pay attention even more, and which is why I'm bringing up this topic, right? It was really the reason why I brought up this topic. I saw something, I observed something in my day job, where I recognize that people really need to, people really need to heal themselves. So if you had the situation where you were working in, say, a cutthroat environment, in an environment where um, you always had to defend yourself, or people were always trying to, drag you down. They were, it was a real cutthroat environment. It's like a what would what do we say? The crab in the barrel syndrome. If you were working in such an environment, you would now have had some you would have built up some defense mechanism to protect yourself, right, from that type of situation. So maybe it is that you decide, you know what, because I went through this, I'm not going to be close to people. So maybe you're very distant at work. Maybe when your team goes out, or if people go out as a group in your organization, you don't participate in it. But maybe you've now, plus other things, maybe now you found yourself where you are in a leadership role now. You're in a leadership role, and so you may think it's fine. But sometimes, and what I saw, the way it shows up is that somebody on your team makes a mistake. Somebody on your team um, does something, and you take it personal. You think it's an attack about you, against you, because you're the manager. You think that they're trying to make you look bad deliberately, and they're trying to sabotage you. And this is sort of like a narrative that is running in your head, right? Drop a drop an emoji if that makes sense. And I saw that and I'm like, okay, that's not good, right? Now, if this resonates with you, this example resonates with you, and these examples, then you need to ask yourself questions. You need to heal that part of that that part of you, right? People will be people, right? People will be people, but you have to hold yourself to a higher standard. Everybody is not the same, right? And maybe you were in situations that you didn't trust people. Like people betrayed your trust. That's what it is, really, that situation. They betrayed your trust. But you kind of have to find a way to not have these negative narratives and emotions running through your head when a similar situation pops up, because that is what happens to all of us. If we have gone through something in our life that is emotionally hurts us, and there is a word or a phrase, sometimes it's a scent, it brings us back, because that's the way we are wired. It brings us back to that particular place, and we react accordingly, and we have to find a way to resolve that, because it shows up in our leadership. Here's how it shows up. It shows up by you becoming stressed and emotionally unbalanced, which affects your mood, and your mood drives your behavior. You go to work as a leader, and people don't know how to approach you. One minute you're good, the next minute you're moody. You need to resolve that. You can't, yes, I know I was just the one that said you can't divorce your feelings. That is true, but you're leading a team. So you need to find a way to resolve that within yourself, right? People shouldn't have to tiptoe or wonder if it's the right time to talk to you. Yes, there are times that, we are a little bit, quiet, or there's something going on and it is affecting, our general, we're not as bubbly. We are, but we're not as bubbly. But to affect it in a whole 360, no. So you become stressed emotionally, and that is not good, because it'll affect your behavior. You cannot focus well. This is tip number 2. You can't focus well, right, when you don't resolve these situations and you're not aligned, right? You can't focus. So you can't do your work properly. So you're thinking about the presentation that you made a fool of yourself, right? And you're like, you're just embarrassed, and you're dwelling on that, and you have this narrative running through your mind. Instead, you try to find closure. Instead, you say, you know what, I'm human, I make mistakes. Instead, you speak to somebody, a mentor, someone else that you respect in the organization. Instead, you go and try and book some public speaking classes or some class online on how to present. You sit there and you let it fester, right? I had a boss, and I just remember this. I had a boss, and I was grateful for how she did this, but it was, it started to get annoying after a while. She had a situation where she didn't plan for an employee event, right? She was my director, and she didn't plan well for an employee event. And her general manager walked into the event, and it was a disaster. It was a disaster. And when she managed us, she was our director. She was like, "You will not embarrass me." That's what she said. "You will not embarrass me. This will go fine, da 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 da." And when somebody says that to you, like, I think only your parents are allowed to say that to you, right? When somebody says that to you, it kind of put you in a, like, oh my God, I can't make a mistake. And these are the kinds of things that we need to heal from. Now, the messaging could have been different. She could have gone through that. She could have acknowledged the fact that she messed up, right? And she could have resolved within herself that, hey, this is a learning experience. And so the next time, I'm going to make sure I have a checklist. I'm checking the event the day before. I'm going to treat it like it's a paying guest, that sort of thing. She could have done that, right? But not, I don't think she resolved it, but she's like, "You will not embarrass me. I will not be embarrassed." And she was like a drill sergeant when it came to those things, right? So her messaging was like a bit off. Like I said, I understood it, but I don't think she resolved it. These are the things that I'm talking about because they are even more intense situations. Sometimes we see our leaders acting in a particular way, and it's really stressful, and it's really because they've had situations in their careers that they have not resolved properly. They haven't been given closure. They haven't taken steps to act on it and close it out. And so they don't. Yes, the next time you wanna do better, but you know you don't pressure everybody else because people have stuff going on with them. Is my point. Does this make sense to you? Let me know. Anyway, so if you don't recover and if you don't resolve these situations, then you also contribute to creating, and this is a big one, a toxic work environment. This is how toxic work environments are caused because people don't deal with the mess. They don't deal with the mess. So you contribute to creating a toxic work environment, and nobody wants that, right? You affect, and this is what I was talking about earlier, you affect this, and this is tip number 5, you affect the psychological safety of your team. They don't feel comfortable with you being their leader because they don't know who's going to show up today. They don't know. They know whenever they have a presentation coming up, you are going to be ridiculous, right? You're going to be ridiculous. You're going to be relentless. You're going to drive everybody up the wall. And it's really because you had that embarrassing moment. You need to resolve it. You need to put stuff, a framework, a mechanism, something in place that these things don't happen. When we don't resolve these embarrassing situations that we come up against professionally, then we stress out everybody else and we stress ourselves out. So you affect the psychological safety of your team. Okay. And then lastly, you affect your relationships at work. Nobody wants to work in your department. Nobody wants to work in with you. You have a very high staff turnover because you are the way in which you are managing. You are allowing all those experiences that you've had to affect the way you lead because you didn't learn. One, you didn't learn from them. The only thing that you learned from them was, hey, I'm not going to put myself in this situation again. That's the only thing you learned. Because if you did learn, you would put other measures in place. You would try to find help. Okay. And these are just um, a few things that can happen and contribute to the way you show up as a leader. Okay, in addition to stuff that may have happened to you. Let's use an example of where you may have been, um, been in a situation where you've been uh, sexually assaulted, for example. How does that affect you when now you're in an organization and you are around men, right? Or you're alone with your boss who is a man? He's probably not doing you anything, right? But you are uncomfortable. These things, and because you're uncomfortable, it shows in your behavior. You appear aloof. For example, you may have males on your team that you're leading, and you know they may say something that's triggering. They may remind you of that person who did whatever, and you just don't like them. I just don't like that person until you treat them differently. Poor Jim doesn't know why, and he's probably a good worker, and so these are just ways in which, if we don't deal with the stuff that's going on, the stuff that has happened to us, it shows up in our leadership. Now, I didn't go down the route of those personal traumas, but that's just an example of a personal trauma that may have happened to you, coupled with the fact that you now come to work and you have professionally embarrassing situations. You need to close that out. You need to find a resolution to them so that you could show up more authentically, you could show up more powerfully, you could show up more influentially, you can inspire your team, you can be the leader that you want to be, you know, and so that there's a flow that you could just, progress and grow. Leadership is an ongoing, working hours on ourselves is an ongoing thing. It's ongoing. It never stops because there's always another level. There's always another thing that we uncover. There's always um, a difficult person that we've not, a situation that we've not dealt with before that has now come up, right, to challenge our ability to lead. And so I just wanted to jump on here and share with you this week about um, these why it's important to find closure with these situations that happen to us. All right. And thank you so much for joining me. Let me know what you think in the comments, and also share this out with a friend that you have who maybe wants to be, I know, who wants to be, oh, and my friend is here, um, who wants to be a manager, or, someone who is new in the leadership role. Share it out with them. They may find it helpful. Not may, they will find it helpful. um, and let me know if there's a topic that you would like me to, or content you would like me to speak more on. Let me know as well. If I can incorporate it, I will, because it does have to fall under, the goal that I'm trying to achieve, which is, in the context of communication and relationships at work, right? And so, if you're just joining me, then um, go back and listen to the live stream, and you're going to find it helpful. And if you didn't see the content this week on the People's Brand, usually what I do is the content in the week should give you an indication as to where we're going on Saturday, like the overview of what we're going to talk about on Saturday. I try to theme my weeks out. It's easier for me, and it's easier for you too, so that you can learn and you can follow along and it can flow, right? It's all about flow. And so I will speak to you next week. Thank you for joining me on another Wavelength Wednesday. Not Wavelength Wednesdays, I'm sorry, on another live stream. You see how the brain works? It's so conditioned. It's so conditioned. Anyway, um, talk to you soon. Bye.